Look at your face in the mirror tomorrow morning. Really look at it. The jaw, the brow, the shape of your cheekbones, the way your teeth sit in your mouth. You've looked at that face your entire life and never once questioned it. This is just what humans look like. Except it isn't. The face staring back at you is not the default human face. It's not the original. It's not even close to what your ancestors looked like for the vast majority of human history. It's a recent design. And here's what makes that strange. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. For 290,000 of those years, the human face barely changed. Something happened 10,000 years ago. And in what amounts to an evolutionary eyeblink, the human face restructured itself more dramatically than it had in the previous 300 millennia combined. The question isn't just what we looked like before. The question is what caused it. Because the answer is one of the most unsettling things science has ever discovered about our own species. Let's start with what we actually know. Paleoanthropologists have spent decades reconstructing ancient human faces from fossil skulls. They dig them out of riverbeds in Ethiopia, out of cave floors in South Africa, out of collapsed shelters in Europe. Site after site, continent after continent, the picture that emerges is consistent. The pre-agricultural human face was a different face. The brow ridge was heavier, more pronounced. It jutted forward in a way that would look severe, almost threatening by modern standards. The jaw was wider and deeper, built for a job it no longer has to do. The teeth were larger, the molars especially, worn flat by a lifetime of grinding raw, tough, fibrous food. The skull itself was thicker, denser. The cheekbones sat higher and wider. The overall impression was of a face built for hardness. These weren't primitive features, they were functional ones. Every millimeter of bone was carved by the demands of the world outside. For 290,000 years, the human face was shaped by exactly one thing: survival. And then, around 10,000 years ago, something interrupted that process entirely: farming. The shift from hunting and gathering to agriculture is the most significant behavioral change in human history. Most people understand what it did to human society. It created permanent settlements. It created food surpluses large enough to free people from constant foraging. It created the conditions for everything we now call civilization: cities, writing, law, specialization, trade. What almost nobody talks about is what it did to the human skull. Before agriculture, the human diet was mechanically brutal. Meat that had to be torn from bone, roots pulled from hard ground and gnawed raw, dried strips of preserved animal, tough as leather, nuts cracked with back teeth when no tools were nearby. This was not soft food. It was food that fought back. That daily mechanical load shaped the developing face from childhood onward. When bone is placed under repeated stress during growth, it responds, it builds. The jaw of a hunter-gatherer child grew wide and deep because it was being used like a tool every single day. Farming erased that record. Cooked grain, soft bread, boiled legumes, fermented foods. The agricultural diet was, mechanically speaking, dramatically easier to process. The jaw no longer needed to be a grinding machine. And over generations, without that stimulus, it stopped building itself like one. Skeletal remains tell the story directly. Archaeologists comparing pre-agricultural and post-agricultural skulls from the same geographic regions have found consistent changes across thousands of specimens. The jaw narrows, the face shortens vertically, the brow ridge flattens, the midface pulls inward. The overall facial structure becomes, in the clinical language of the field, more gracile. That word means slender, delicate, less robust. Your face, compared to your ancestors from 15,000 years ago, is a gracile face. Smaller jaw, flatter brow, shorter overall structure. Teeth crowded into a jaw that shrank faster than the teeth inside it, which is exactly why wisdom teeth have been causing problems for every generation since agriculture began. 2014, A researcher at the University of Utah named Robert Cieri published a study that reframed the entire question. Cieri wasn't just measuring jaw size. He was measuring something else. He was measuring aggression markers, specifically the brow ridge and the upper face. In primates, these features are directly linked to testosterone exposure during development. High testosterone during growth produces heavier, more pronounced brow ridges and wider upper faces. It's a pattern seen consistently across species. The more socially dominant and aggressive the animal, the more pronounced these features tend to be. Cieri and his team measured 1,400 human skulls, spanning 80,000 years of human history. They pulled from museum collections, archaeological sites, and fossil databases across 4 continents. They ran the measurements against each other and looked for patterns across time. What they found was this: the most dramatic reduction in aggression markers in the entire human fossil record did not happen gradually across hundreds of thousands of years. It happened in the last 10,000, right when agriculture appeared, right when humans began living in large, dense, cooperative settlements for the first time in the species' history. Cieri's argument was not simply that farming changed the face through diet, it was that civilization changed the face through selection. That the demands of living in close quarters with large numbers of unrelated strangers, people you didn't grow up with, people you had no tribal obligation to, selected over generations for less aggressive individuals. The humans who could cooperate, defer, tolerate, and negotiate were the ones who thrived inside the new social structure. They traded more successfully, they formed more alliances, they raised more children to adulthood. And the humans who couldn't manage it were filtered out, generation by generation, in ways that left no grave marker, but showed up clearly in the bone record.
This selection pressure literally reshaped the human face. And this is where it gets harder to sit with. Because Cieri's findings connected directly to a theory that had been building in biology for years before his paper landed: the Domestication Hypothesis. In the early 2000s, researcher Brian Hare at Duke University was studying one specific puzzle about dogs. Not their loyalty, not their intelligence, but their uncanny ability to read human social cues. Dogs follow a pointed finger. They respond to a human gaze. They pick up on subtle shifts in human attention in ways that wolves, even wolves raised from birth by humans, largely cannot do. Hare traced this difference back to the domestication process itself. The early wolves that tolerated human proximity, the ones that were less fearful, less reactive, more socially flexible, those were the individuals that survived around human settlements. They got fed, they reproduced. The aggressive ones didn't last. Over thousands of generations, selecting for that single behavioral trait produced the entire physical package we now associate with domestic dogs. Smaller skulls, flatter faces, reduced brow ridges. Biologists call this cluster of changes domestication syndrome. And when researchers turned that framework around and pointed it at the human fossil record, the comparison was difficult to argue with. Same timeline, same physical changes, same direction. Smaller faces, reduced aggression markers, juvenile features retained into adulthood. The conclusion sitting underneath all of this research is one most people find genuinely uncomfortable. Humans self-domesticated. Not intentionally, not by design. Nobody decided this should happen. But the same filtering process that turned wolves into dogs operated on our species. Civilization rewarded the cooperative, the socially tolerant, the less reactive. It punished the volatile and the aggressive in ways both formal and informal. And over 10,000 years, that pressure produced a new face. Your face. The jaw you use to eat food someone else processed. The flattened brow above eyes that no longer need to track predators across open ground. The features that a stranger reads in a fraction of a second as approachable rather than threatening. That face was not handed to you by nature. It was built by every cooperative decision your ancestors made, every settlement they chose to stay in, every alliance they held together, every time they swallowed the impulse to act on aggression because the social contract was worth more than the fight. Written directly into your bones over 10,000 years. Which raises a question that evolutionary biology cannot fully answer. If social pressure reshaped the bone, the hard part, the part we can dig up and measure, what did it do to everything inside? The skull is just what fossilizes. We domesticated ourselves into civilization, and civilization domesticated us right back. Next time you look in the mirror, you are not looking at a wild face. You are looking at the face of an animal that chose 10,000 years ago to live together and has been changing ever since.